Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from SkepticPsychologist. Except it isn't actually a question. It's going to be a response to a comment. And the comment was made in response to an earlier vlog. And SkepticPsychologist pointed out their point of view that if one believes in magic and the supernatural, one should proceed with extreme wisdom and care. And then SkepticPsychologist adds the famous saying, "Be careful what you wish for." And I thought that I would speak to that concept today. And I actually am a great believer in the idea that we get what we wish for or what we ask for, but that this isn't necessarily a straightforward statement. And I wanted to deal with that. But first I'm going to have a comment about a similar situation with the law of Thelema. And I imagine most people watching this know what the law of Thelema is. If you don't, I've done vlogs on it. The law of Thelema is closely related to, but different from the Wiccan Rede and much, much older. It comes from Rabelais, and it is do as thou wilt. And this appears to mean do anything you want. But many people who work with this concept interpret it very, very differently. And there are two major interpretations of the phrase that are very different from what you might imagine if you were not familiar with actual teachings. And the first has to do with the idea of true will, which is similar in concept to the higher self. Your true will is what you came into this life to do, and where your higher self guides you. And when you depart from that, you are no longer following your true will. And many people who follow the law of Thelema hold that what it really means is that you should always follow that true will. Do what you wilt. The second idea is a little bit closer to the subject of the vlog, be careful what you ask for. And that is the idea that the will in the law of Thelema has to do with your actual focused will, your magical ability, so to speak, and that you will do what you will. And if you do not will it, it will not come to pass, which is very closely related to the idea of be careful what you ask for. It is the idea that what you will come to pass, and therefore everything that comes to pass has come about because of your will. And if you don't like what's come to pass, you need to examine your will and change what you are focusing on. So when we talk about the idea of be careful what you wish for or be careful what you ask for, at least from a Correllian perspective, it does not necessarily at all mean what you're consciously wishing for or consciously asking for. It can be a very unconscious thing. And this is why we focus so strongly on shadow work, which is dealing with all the levels of your persona to clear blockages, which may cause crossed wires, which bring about results you did not consciously want, but were unconsciously focused on. So when we talk about be careful what you wish for from a Correllian perspective, we're actually talking more about what you believe or what you expect. And if you are working consciously with these things, then it may also be what you are consciously asking for, but it isn't necessarily. Often it's coming from parts of your being that you are not conscious of, and it may be very different from what you think you want. And this is one of the ways people trip themselves up. I often refer to this as having crossed wires. What you think you want and what your inner self is actually focusing on and what you're willing to accept are not always the same thing. And a good example of that is the person who wants to get a wonderful new job, but in their heart they don't believe they can. They're not going to be able to. The person who thinks that they desperately want a romance, but in their heart they fear romance and really don't want it at all, obviously they're not going to find that romance. They will block it. But when we talk about be careful what you wish for, in both of those cases, it's not the conscious wish that prevails, but the unconscious. And again, this is why shadow work is so very, very important. You cannot do what you do not believe you can do, and you cannot receive what you are not willing to accept. And more often than not, people will very fervently think they want something that they're actually blocking and never understand why they just can't seem to do it. But if you do your shadow work, you can untie that blockage and then move forward to what you have been pursuing. So when we talk about be careful what you wish for, again, it's not necessarily conscious, but it's ever so very important. And when we do shadow work, we go beyond our conscious mind to the hidden parts of our being. That's why it's called shadow. And many of our inner beliefs, many of our inner expectations are hidden in that shadow part of ourselves. And only by addressing them there can we, in many cases, even realize what they are, let alone heal them and move beyond them. And second degree in the Correllian degree lessons focuses a great deal on ways of doing this. And I cannot too strongly recommend doing shadow work to work with these parts of your shadow self. Or if you prefer to describe them as energy blockages or lost soul energy, there are many ways to describe it. It's all the same thing. It's parts of yourself that you're alienated from, but still responding to. And when you heal them, you move much more into a conscious place to manifest the things that you desire. So those are my thoughts on the matter. I hope you find them helpful, and until next time, may you blessed be. Please join me for our Correllian Peace Prayer. I pray for peace. I pray for love. I pray for stability. I pray for the nation where I live. I pray for the world.